Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad, Paramamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Sutrang Shishimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi. Glorious to the Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. Glorious to the Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. Glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So thank you for your presence. So we're reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is New Delhi, crying alone in the wilderness. It shows how the pure devotee is not always necessarily, a bed of roses, but there are struggles to be had, even for the pure devotee. And in this particular part of the Lilamrita or Prabhupada's journey, we see him struggle in different ways. So Abai further reported that since it was almost impossible to expect a printer to work speedily from Haddon manuscript, he had already rented a typewriter. He also mentioned his idea for increasing the number of subscribers. Abai's son, Vrindavan, came to live with him for a few months at the Gaudiya Sangha. There was no question of Abai's returning to his family, and Vrindavan simply associated with his father, following the routines of the math and helping Abai in his duties. One day, a prominent advocate, the president of the Hindu Mahasabha, paid an unexpected visit to the Gaudiya Sangha. The math was mostly deserted, and there were no prasadam on hand. So Abai and Vrindavan received the prominent guest, cooking for him, offering him prasadam, and acquainting him with the activities of the Sangha. When Abai wasn't busy managing the disorganized mat and working on Gaudiya Patrika and Sajjana Toshani, he spent his time preparing a Hindi translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Although he was more accustomed to writing in English and Bengali, he reasoned that as long as he was preaching in Hindi-speaking areas, such a book would be important. So here Srila Prabhupada has left his family. He's taken this residence at one of his godbrothers' mats, and he's trying to organize certain things, but he's always meditating on preaching in English, which was the first instruction he received from his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, that as an English-speaking person, you should go to the West and preach. So that was always in the background of Srila Prabhupada's mind. Bhakti Saranga Goswami wrote that he wanted to print only 500 copies of Sajjana Toshani for the September issue, but Abai wanted to print more. After making an agreement with the printer that the charges would be the same as 1,000 copies as for 500, he wrote Bhakti Saranga Goswami informing him of the good news. Abai also told him that he had recently secured a donation of printing paper and that he had arranged for 1/4 reduction in the postal charges. So why, for the matter of saving some papers, this is Prabhupada, we shall not print a full number. In my opinion, we should print more than 1,000 copies every month and distribute them in large scale. But Bhakti Saranga replied through a brief postcard that they should print no more than 500. Abai continued his attempts to improve Sajjana Toshini. For him, it was not a perfunctory duty, but absorbing preaching. In a letter to Bhaktisaranga Goswami, he expressed anxiety over waiting for him to send articles for the next issues. Funds were scarce, so scarce that Abai had no decent dhoti, and yet he continued to envision a glorious future for Sajjana Toshini. Chanaka Pandit says one of the worst situations to be in is to live in someone else's house. So Srila Prabhupada was in that predicament where he was living at his godbrother's ashram, and although Prabhupada had a vision of widely preaching, it appears from this that his godbrother didn't share that, and Srila Prabhupada had to submit to that because he was not the person in charge of that mutt. So Prabhupada's writing again to his godbrother, I wish to see this paper just to the standard of Illustrated Weekly, which was a big magazine, with numerous pictures in order to make it a very popular literature. And for this, I wish to move myself to secure subscribers as well as advertisers. I wish to visit good businessmen, insurance companies, and government officers in this connection. But I have no proper dress at all. I want 2 sets of good dresses in order to take up this responsibility, and I should be glad to have your decision on this matter. It is my heart's desire that this paper is improved to the highest elevation. So Prabhupada here expresses he doesn't have proper dhoti, proper kurta, proper dress to go and see some very rich people. And the idea is that if you look like a beggar, you'll receive donations like a beggar, a few paisas. But if you dress like a gentleman, then they'll respect you, and then you'll get big donations. So this is not that Prabhupada is thinking, I need something fancy for myself. He didn't care about himself, but for the preaching, he saw that this is very important. And we know Srila Prabhupada had dealt with many businessmen. He was a pharmacist. He had his own company. And Dr. Bosch had hired him to be as one of the managers and a sales representative. And he would go to many places around India and distribute pharmaceutical product. So he knew how to deal with businessmen. It wasn't something new to him. Abai also requested that Bhaktisaranga Goswami help him publish his Hindi Chaitanya Charitamrita. Some non-Bengali gentlemen were demanding the book and had assured Abai that they would pay 25 rupees per volume. Abai requested a loan of 600 rupees under any arrangement suitable to Bhaktisaranga Goswami for publishing the first part of this work. If this part is sold out, Abai wrote, the other parts will automatically come out because he'll get the money and then he'll reprint. But just as life in the Gaudiya Sangha and work on the Sajjana Toshini under Bhaktisaranga Goswami's hand produced strain for Abai, Abai's ambition for increasing circulation and his strong editorial opinions also created strain for Bhaktisaranga Maharaj. In response to Abai's letter, Bhaktisaranga Goswami's secretary, Ramananda, wrote a letter full of flowery praise of Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, but with the intent of diminishing him from his position with the Gaudiya Sangha. So this is a letter that this Ramananda, in response to Srila Prabhupada's request. With innumerable humble obeisances at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, Srimad Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, we receive your letter written to Shri Guru Maharaj on the 5th, 10th, 1955. Your project is very lofty, and we are very wisher of our society. we got to know that also. So he's a well-wisher, and he's very concerned about the society. Since the last 2 months, in spite of so many difficulties, the difficulties of prasadam and misunderstanding of the devotees there, and in spite of various other difficulties, the kind and enthusiasm that you have shown, that is possible only for an elevated Vaishnav like yourself. You are a favorite Vaishnav of Srila Prabhupada, meaning Bhaktisiddhanta, and a friend of all the special associates of Srila Prabhupada. Most of the devotees of Gaudiya Sangha ashram in Delhi are new and less respectful. They cannot give proper respect to an elevated personality like yourself, especially the lofty speculation that you have. Our society, at the present circumstances, has very little ideas. We hope, with all your qualities, very soon you will become settled independently and fulfill the desire of Srila Prabhupada. Start preaching very widely. So although this letter is seemingly full of praise, it's practically just insulting Prabhupada, telling him that his ideas are very lofty, that because the devotees there are very neophytes, they can't see how exalted he is, and then surely you'll be able to independently serve Bhaktisiddhanta. Although Prabhupada at this time is poverty-stricken, he has no facility, he's practically a beggar himself. But he has one thing, he has straight, very strong conviction and very strong determination. When Prabhupada was taking sannyas at the Keshava Gaudiya Math, you know, when you're doing the fire sacrifice, everyone in the meantime are chanting japa, but when it's time to chant the prayers in the fire sacrifice, then everyone has to be quiet, and the priest is chanting, and then everyone swaha, and everyone swaha. So Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was there. He was one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and he was always chanting. So at one point, even though everyone was silent, he kept chanting. So the head priest told him, okay, stop, now it's time to pay attention to the ceremony. And Prabhupada went like this. Continue. And when our deities here, Krishna Balaram, were installed, although we invited the local priests and so forth, because Prabhupada said otherwise our deities would not be accepted, Prabhupada said that ultimately the installation of our deities was the kirtan. So Prabhupada had great faith in the holy name. And even though here, sometimes we say they must have eaten their words. Sometimes you say that expression because you say something and later on it proves to be true. So here they're saying with your lofty ideas, and I'm sure you'll be very able to do these things and please Bhaktisiddhanta. So they must have eaten their words, because Prabhupada did accomplish these things and even more than anyone could even imagine. We see today this Krishna Balaram Mandir, although it's coming from the West, it's a little austere to have so many devotees and guests come. It's very packed. But it's very pleasing to see that so many people are coming, taking the effort, making the effort. We have to remember that still all these people are coming. We can't take it for granted. They're coming to see Krishna. They're coming to see Srila Prabhupada. So this is our success. So even though maybe we get bumped, and squeezed, and difficult to walk because there's so many people coming, but it's to Srila Prabhupada's glory that this is taking place, and we should be very happy about that. So here, we are suspecting that it won't be possible for an able and respectable Vaishnav like yourself to stay there long, adjusting with the illiterate and less educated devotees of the Gaudiya Sangha in Delhi. Moreover, you are the head of the editorial board of Srimad Keshava Maharaj's Vedanta Smriti Gaudiya Patrika and Bhagavad Patrika. So if you spend much time in our ashram, then he might become annoyed. With many devotees, he is setting out to circumambulate the land of Braj, and we are sure that he will need your assistance in this parikram. So you consider all the pros and cons, and if you do not neglect the duty as a leader of this organization, we will be pleased. So in other words, they're saying just go and join Keshava Maharaj and the Keshava Gaudiya Math, because we're two small timers here. We can't adjust ourselves to your lofty ideas and so forth. And now he's doing Braj Parikram, so sure he'll need someone to help him in this big effort of doing. So you know, before you get too offended here, there's too many aparads committed to you here. Please, it'd be better if you go somewhere else. Some articles have been sent for the October issue, Sajjana Toshani, and some more might be sent. We will be very much obliged if you would instruct Keshavananda Prabhu to publish the October issue. So again, they're saying, okay, thanks a lot, but we got somebody else who's going to take care of the new issue, the October issue. We hope that Shri Guru Maharaj will be able to personally publish the November and December issue. We wish to transfer it to Calcutta for the month of January. Shri Guru Maharaj has become old, and most of the time he has to depend on us. We are happy to know that you are trying very hard to publish the Chaitanya Charitamrita in Hindi, but at the present circumstances, it won't be possible for us to invest 600 rupees from our fund in order to print that, because Shri Guru Maharaj has taken up many projects in different directions now, and he has to spend a lot of money, so he can't take the responsibility of printing that book. So, on all levels, Prabhupada is not getting any help. Keshavananda Prabhu wrote that your cloths are getting torn, so buy a pair of cloth from the fund of the temple, and that the devotees commit offenses at your lotus feet due to their short-sightedness, please forgive them. So yeah, after everything we've told you, if you're still determined to buy these clothes, we'll let you do that. But be aware that actually some of us might insult you in the process. Just be aware of that, right? Signed, the servant of the Vaishnava, Srimananda Ramananda Das. It was not a fact that Abai was being called for leadership in Keshava Maharaj's parikram, although it was a good excuse for Ramananda's suggesting that Abai leave the Gaudiya Sangha. So after living as a dutiful member of the ashram of Keshava Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, Abai was again on his own. Without income or institutional shelter, Abai began staying in various homes in Delhi, living from week to week wherever he received an invitation. In terms of food, clothing, and shelter, there were the most difficult times he had ever gone through. Since his childhood, there had always been plenty of food and good cloths, and no question of where he would live. He had been the pet child of his father, and he had received special guidance and affection for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, but now Abai sometimes felt alone. Homeless, he moved around Delhi from one temporary residence to another, a Vishnu temple, a room at the Kapoor College of Commerce, but he was seeking donors, preaching from Bhagavad-Gita, writing. His goal wasn't to find a permanent residence, but to print his transcendental literature and to establish or join forces with a pure, powerful movement for spreading Krishna consciousness. Abai made a list of several books he wanted to publish. 1, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Hindi, 2,000 copies. 2, Gita Upanishad, English, 1,200. 3, Science of Devotion, English, 300. 4, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan Movement, English, 300. 5, Message of Godhead, English, 300. And Bhagavanir Katha, Bengali, 50. But to print, he needed donors. He called on wealthy men in their offices and homes, presenting his manuscript and explaining his mission. He had a list of donors, but few responded. And when he did receive a donation, it was usually only 5 to 10 rupees. Occasionally, he would receive a letter of appreciation or endorsement. We can barely appreciate or understand the situation Prabhupada was facing in these times. It's practically inconceivable to us. Seeing the opulence of ISKCON today, how fortunate we are. There's restaurants around, nice temple, big hall here, AC, running water, hot water even. I remember when we used to come here in the early, well, it wasn't that early, but first time I came was in 76. It was just, we were staying at the Fogol ashram, just pumps, sleeping on the floor with just a little gumshoe kind of thing, and now it's so opulent. At the same time, unfortunately, the mood is also changing. Before this was all forest, you'd see peacocks, and now it's all construction, all cement. So it's nice in one sense. We have modern facility, but the mood there's a compromise at that the mood of Vrindavan is also changing. I was telling devotee yesterday, we're coming back from Radhakund, and we were taking a back road, and it practically looks like Mathura now, There's so much construction and a high rise, and no one would imagine they would be building this thing like, 10 or 20 stories high in Vrindavan of all places. Maybe Mathura, but here, and this garden and this thing, and and in 5-10 years from now, we can't imagine how more it's going to be. So it's good to reflect on when you go to Radha Damodar, even those quarters that you go to see are very modern compared to when Prabhupada was living there. Because when Prabhupada was living there was no fan in the ceilings. When you go to Radha Damodar temple, there's Prabhupada's rooms there. But those weren't the rooms when Prabhupada stayed there. They didn't have ceiling fans and electricity and all these different things, running water, and a lot of these things have been added. I think now they even have AC, But when Prabhupada was living there, none of these things were there. So we might get the impression, oh, this is how Prabhupada lived, but no, it's not like that at all. One appreciation came from Naren Das Raj Bahadur, a retired executive engineer and secretary of the Birla Mandir Trust, who had attended a public reading Abai had held in the presence of a popular guru, Mother Anandamoyi. Impressed by Abai's reading from his Hindi Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mother Anandamoyi had donated 50 rupees and suggested that Abai also visit a well-known sadhu, Shri Hari Baba, who was lying ill in a hospital. Abai, accompanied by Naren Das, had then visited Hari Baba, who had claimed that Abai's reading put him into ecstasy. Meanwhile, Naren Das was becoming inclined to help, and in December he wrote a letter suggesting that everyone extend their helping hand for the successful publication of Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta's various writings in Hindi, English, and Bengali. I wish him all success in his noble attempt. Abai would show this and other such letters to prospective supporters. In Delhi, it was not difficult to see government ministers, judges, lawyers, business executives, religious heads. There were always someone willing to hear seriously and occasionally to offer support. Thus Abai, with the two dhotis and kirta, the Gaudiya Sangha had supplied him, and with his ability to preach and convince, but with little support and no fixed residence, continued his preaching undaunted. Writing and trying to publish was only half his efforts. The other half was taking part in efforts for a world movement like the League of Devotees. Through Naren Das, Abhay inquired whether there might be a way he could do his work under the auspices of the Birla Mandir, one of the largest and richest temples in Delhi. Abhay proposed that he be put in charge of the propaganda of the English language, both within India and abroad. Since Naren Das considered himself a follower of Sanatana Dharma, Abhay wrote to him explaining how the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita set forth the real Sanatana Dharma. Abhay had many ideas about how Sanatana Dharma, as the eternal religion for all living beings, could be expanded and practically applied if Naren Das would but help him. I want to train up to 40 educated youth to learn this science of transcendental knowledge and just prepare them for going to foreign countries for missionary work. To start immediately an English paper or to revive my paper Back to Godhead in the style of Illustrated Weekly or of India. To organize a Sankirtan party which shall not be only of good singers and musicians but must also be used to practice sadhana or self-realization. Prabhupada made the comment that Gandhi tried to label the Bungis and the low-class people as Harijans. But he had no method of purifying them. So just to label some person is not enough. Yeah, we're all sons of Hari, Nityo Nityanas Chaitanas Chaitananam. We're all servants of Krishna. But there has to be a process by which we purify ourselves and come to that stage. So here Prabhupada is mentioning that not only are they going to be good musicians and so forth, but they're going to be practicing, applying the process of sadhana bhakti, which when Prabhupada came to America, he gave us. He gave us a practical process by which we could take and apply ourselves. And in this way, Chaitodarpana Marjanam, we could purify our hearts and actually develop a taste for Krishna. Without the heart being purified, then we just become sahaja. We have so-called emotions for Krishna, but no genuine appreciation because there's no cleansing of the heart. Abhaya promised that as soon as he had done some groundwork, he, along with the men and equipment, could start for foreign countries to propagate this missionary work. But he admitted also that he was extremely in dire straits. Kindly do arrange for the above immediately and give me a proper place to live. I must remove from this temporary quarter by Monday next latest. The director of the Birla Mandir did not take Abhay up on his offer, but he thought of another way of engaging them. He would hold a public meeting at the Birla Mandir to help generate interest in the League of Devotees. He approached Sri R.N. Agawar, president of the Delhi Municipal Committee, who after hearing the name of several respectable people who would be attending, agreed to preside over the meeting. Abhay set the date for December 22 and printed 500 announcements and 200 invitation cards. Striking a cosmopolitan note, he stated in his announcement, by the grace of the Almighty, Delhi is becoming the center of cultural association of the world. The leaders of both Russia and India has recently pointed to the need for cultural contact between all nations. But the highest culture, Abhay suggested, was scientific spiritual knowledge. Therefore, the best cultural resources in the world existed in India. And these resources, Abhay stressed, should not be left to the unorganized sadhus and sannyasis, but should be taken up by important members of society in an organized way. This was also a problem that Prabhupada saw and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta saw, that prior to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, the mood of a sadhu was to go to Radhakund, to holy places, and to remove oneself from cities like Calcutta and Delhi. Bhaktisiddhanta was doing the very opposite. He was sending his men to Delhi, to Calcutta, to Bombay, and some of his own disciples had a hard time understanding what is Bhaktisiddhanta. What are we going to do there? We should be at Radhakund, we should be at the holy places, not in some city like Calcutta or Delhi. And Prabhupada is mentioning similar in this presentation that there has to be some organization. The British, when they came to India, they were very organized. And Prabhupada perceived that organization is very essential if you're going to achieve a goal. Otherwise, it's just scattered. One is chanting here, one is doing that, that's very good. But unless there's a systematic organization to spread Krishna consciousness, to organize the army of Lord Chaitanya, many times Prabhupada would say, the Sankirtan army, we organize ourselves in such a way to spread Krishna consciousness in an efficient way, and you judge something by the results. But it was difficult for many to appreciate that conception. It seemed just ordinary or mundane. But when applied to Krishna consciousness, it's not ordinary. That's why Bhaktisiddhanta started using vehicles, and he started using printing press. He started using whatever was there, and that was the real yukta vairagya. Not renunciation, you don't have it, it's very easy to be detached because you don't have it. But once you have it, what you're going to do with it? That's real detachment. And when you have it, you're able to use it for Krishna. Not that now I have it, I can use it for gratification. That's the tendency usually. So usually we encourage people not to have money, not to, nadanamna janamna sundarim, yes, because as soon as you'll have these things, it'll go to your head. You'll lose Krishna consciousness. But one who's very mature, he can use these things and not get distracted. He can use all these things for Krishna. And when Prabhupada came to the West, that's what he told us to do. And he gave the explanation that India is like lame and America's blind. India's lame, it's poor, it doesn't have much resources. America's very stout, very powerful, the biggest nation of the world, but it's blind. It has no knowledge of what is the purpose of life. But India has that knowledge. So if you take the strong person and you mix it with the blind person, then you have a very good. So India has eyes, it can see because it has knowledge, but it's very weak. And America is strong, but it's blind. So if you take India and America, you combine, you have a very good person, a complete person. So that was Prabhupada's vision of how things should go. That our American wealth, and initially these temples like Mayapur here, it came from Western money. And Prabhupada was a genius. He started our guest house. No one in Vrindavan was doing any guest house. It was just a temple. That's it. Now everyone's doing guest house. Because they realize the guests will come, they'll come to have darshan, and they'll generate. And I see it personally now. You go to all these temples, we used to come here, the deities were just wearing rags, no flute on Krishna, no crown, no pika, nothing. Then the pujari would wake up, he'd see a few people come in, he'd kind of wake up and open the door and hope to get some donation. And it was pathetic. It was unfortunate. Now people are coming and there's more enthusiasm. You go and you see they're renovating, they're fixing, they're serving a little prasadam. So it's encouraging to see, But that's Prabhupada who stimulated that. Now they come and see our worship. ISKCON is famous for two things: our deity worship and our kirtan. No one can match our deity worship and our kirtan. When you see Krishna Balaram, Radha Shyama Sundar, no one compares to this worship. But it's encouraging for others to come and see and want to do the same for their own deities. They have beautiful deities, but they're neglectful. So Prabhupada, by building this guest house, he generated a different vision. Then he started the life membership program also. to generate funds. You became a life member because he knew people from India want to go to the West. So you became a life member, you got some books, but if you came to America, you could stay in our temples for free for 3-4 days. So that was good for them. Okay, we can go to America, and at least for 3-4 days, we know we have a place to stay before we figure out where else we can go. But we can go from one temple to another and visit America, and that way it doesn't cost us much if we become life member. So, Prabhupada was he was a visionary. He saw things that no one else saw. It wasn't just that he understood Bhagavad-Gita and he could preach, but from a very practical platform, very practical, he had visions of how to do things. And when he came to America, his ability to preach to us, Christians, we knew nothing about Krishna. Maybe a few had come to India and they had some hodgepodge idea of what India is about. But when you come to India, you don't understand anything. When these tourists come here, they just get all confused. They don't understand. And Vedic culture is so rich that it's very difficult to understand. It's like walking in a pharmacy. You walk in a pharmacy, what drug you're going to take? What medicine are you going to take? If you walk in a pharmacy, there's so many. You could take something that could kill you. But it's medicine, but it's not for you. So you need a proper doctor who's going to prescribe the proper medicine. And Prabhupada was that expert, doctor. Tadvidi pranipatena. He was the perfect spiritual master to approach. And he was able to give Krishna consciousness. And he was so lovable. Actually, Prabhupada at first didn't preach so much. He just established friendship. With Mukunda, he just would speak and devotees just fell in love with him. They just wanted to be with Prabhupada because he was such an extraordinary person. And Prabhupada could tell so many stories and so many things and talk about everything. So devotees would just, mesmerize, practically like being hypnotized, you get hypnotized. So it was almost like that. Devotees like, I remember we used to get lectures. Prabhupada would travel around the world and they would record Prabhupada and we'd get three cassettes a week. And we'd sit there and listen to those cassettes over and over again. And I couldn't hear, because I am French-Canadian, I had a hard time in English, and I had a hard time Prabhupada's accent, Bengali accent. And the day I was able to fully understand Prabhupada, I was so happy, Finally, I'm able to understand what Prabhupada is fully saying. I was dancing. It was so wonderful. But we just wanted to be close to Prabhupada. Whenever Prabhupada would go somewhere, devotees would just come. They'd be hanging out the windows and, everywhere. Because he was so extraordinary, to be with Prabhupada. You could feel his Shakti. Prabhupada didn't have to say anything. He was just being there, you could feel. And we all wanted to be like Prabhupada. Because we knew if we could be like him, we would be the most happy person in the world. We knew that. Of course, Prabhupada preached and he gave us so much knowledge. But just by seeing Prabhupada, you could see this person is not from this world. And we're from America, so we've seen big people and rich people and people driving with Mercedes and, so that wasn't, but that wasn't what was impressing us. That's not what we were looking for. We wanted something better. We knew that this Western existence was useless. When I was 17, I was already fed up with everything. I was just a young boy and I knew, well, where's this taking me? So I quit school. I used to ask the teacher, okay, I'm going to get a degree. What for? What is the goal of it? Oh, you'll get a good job. So what? Make some money and then go on and go to 60, 80 and then die. So might as well die now. Why go through that whole problem? The whole suffering. Might as well just finish it now. But when Prabhupada came, he explained karma, reincarnation, all these things. Oh, that made sense. Then Krishna, there was a purpose to our existence. Krishna consciousness. But, you know, if you talk to a lot of Prabhupada disciples, we all reflect back how Prabhupada did it. Because it was such a miracle that he could take very complicated issues and make it so simple, you know. That's a sign of a genius. A genius is someone that can take anything, very complicated, Mahavishnu, you know, Brahma coming out, 4 heads, you know, universes coming out. How Prabhupada explained these things to us? He was such a genius that he could explain these things in such a way that us Westerners could appreciate it, could take it to heart, you know. And because we had so much respect for Prabhupada, Prabhupada could say anything and we would accept, you know. Because he was Prabhupada. We had that much faith. Anything Prabhupada would say, but Prabhupada was not, one time Prabhupada was joking, was saying that, you know, there's 4 regulated principles: no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit sex. He said, so no gambling. But he said, you're all gambling that I'm taking you back to Godhead. But he said, rest assured, you'll be going back to Krishna. So Prabhupada he had a good sense of humor, Prabhupada. He told a joke here. When the first Krishna Balaram Mandir was open, there was a bank. Usually banks, they set up next to temples because everyone's coming, so they see the bank. So they were cutting the ribbon to opening the bank. So Prabhupada told a joke that one person came and he heard money attracts money. So he came and he gave his money to the bank teller and he's waiting and waiting and then nothing's happening. So the teller says, yes, sir, what do you want? Well, I heard money attracts money. He said, yes, our money has attracted your money. Striking, I don't know if, okay, it's 1:45 now? Okay. Striking a cosmopolitan note, did I read this? Yeah. December 22, Hindustan Times listed the meeting of the League of Devotees in the Today's Engagements column, along with announcements for meeting of the Rotary Club, the Tagore Society, the Indian Council of World Affairs, Bharat Scouts, and the Indian Pharmaceutical Congress. The League's meeting began with a kirtan led by Professor H. Chand, and then Abai Y.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder of the Secretary of League of Devotees, explained his movement's objectives. Then Naren Das spoke and afterwards read a number of proposed resolutions from the founder secretary attesting that the person present supported the League of Devotees, and they recommended that the central government of India also support it as a movement for world peace based on Gandhian principles. After adoption of the resolutions, the meeting closed with another kirtan and prasad. Abai was convinced that if his well-wishers and fellow humanitarians would support him on the grand scale, he could create a movement for world peace based on the principles of devotional service to Lord Krishna. But his role was simply to present Krishna consciousness to whomever he could. The results were up to Krishna. Abai was aware that the good intentions of most of the participants in this Birla Mandir meeting would not go past that one meeting. But he wasn't discouraged. Through all this tireless evangelism, he maintained a philosophical jollity. In one sense, he was already fully satisfied. He was happy to be working on behalf of his spiritual master. So that's another very important thing, that Prabhupada never got discouraged, despite the fact that it seems for quite a while he's not having much success at his efforts. And we'll see as we read this how much effort Prabhupada did. He did a lot of tapasya, a lot of austerity in his desire to please Bhaktisiddhanta, and he was never discouraged, thinking, well, I'm just wasting my time here. I could just stay here and be a Babaji, just chant and read, be happy. Why am I doing all this? Prabhupada had the taste, so it's not like Prabhupada couldn't do that. Couldn't just stay here and read and chant, But he understood. He expressed that most people come to Vrindavan, but my staying in Vrindavan was Maya. If I stayed in Vrindavan, I was in Maya. Why? Everyone's coming to Vrindavan, Krishna's here, Rasa dance, everything is here. Because my spiritual master ordered me to preach in America. So that was his mission. To fulfill the desire of his spiritual master meant he had to go to the West, not stay in Vrindavan. Although he was changing addresses so fast that his mail could hardly catch up to him, he wrote a newspaper ad for a home study course. Educational. Study of spiritual secret of Bhagavad-Gita at home by correspondence and be a strong man. Full course fee, rupee, 50 rupee only. The instruction is imparted not in the ordinary imaginative way of qualified interpretations, but in the parampara system of preceptorial succession. All questions are properly solved. AC Bhaktivedanta, student of all communities and nationalities are welcome. So again, Prabhupada wanting to start a correspondence course. He had not published Back to Godhead for 4 years, since 1952, but he decided to revive it. Back to Godhead was a mission worthy of his full attention, and it took all his efforts to collect the funds, compose the articles, see to the printing, and then distribute the 1,000 copies. The money he would raise by obtaining interviews and soliciting donation. Only one donor and friend was Justice Bipin Chandra Mishra, a Supreme Court Justice in New Delhi. Justice Mishra. So he's writing. He used to come to me once a month. I gave him a donation for his paper. It was only a 4-page magazine, but he showed his study of the subject and his earnestness and his devotion to Lord Krishna. He appeared to be a very simple man and modest, and it was pleasant to talk to him. He had a smiling demeanor. The main thing was his humility. He could talk with affection and confidence, and he knew we were discussing things near to God. So every talk with him would sublimate us. I was a rather important personality at that time, a religious affair, but he would not be expected to make any contribution to the main religious life of Delhi at that time, because of his language difficulty, because his aim was to reach the English-educated persons, not the Hindi ones, and also because his means and his popularity were not at all established. The magazine did not have a wide appeal amongst these people. Other religious leaders were all well established. The only thing that impressed one and was worth noticing at that time was the simplicity of his ability, of his abiding faith in God's name and his mission. So again, this was Prabhupada's idea that he would go to the West, make some Western devotees, some Americans, and when they would come back as white elephants, they would impress the Indians, because many Indians were seeing America as something to write about, something to want to go there, something, and maybe because of some of the British influence that had been there for many years in India, so many people were looking towards the West. So Prabhupada felt that if Western-bodied people come to India to take up their culture, they would be surprised and say, well, what are we doing? What are we neglecting here? If these Americans are coming here and living our culture, taking up to our culture, why are we abandoning this culture then? Writing articles was no problem. By the grace of his spiritual master, he was neither short of ideas nor unable to set them down. Translating and commentating on the Vaishnava scriptures, his pen flowed freely. He was inspired by the miracles of the press, the Brihatmadanga, the work of writing his message down and printing it 1,000 times, with the awareness and urgency of speaking directly to everyone, not just people in Delhi or India, but everyone. But abide into an ecstatic meditation. He would contemplate how copies of Back to Godhead could reach thoughtful people who might read them gracefully, or gratefully, I should say. Nor was maintenance a problem. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami had declared that a devotee's problem was not food, clothing, or shelter. If one had no bed, he could always lie on the ground and use his arms for a pillow. For clothes, he could always find some rejected garments in the street. For food, he could live on fruits from the trees. And for lodging, he could stay in the mountain caves. Nature supplied all necessities. Transcendentalists could not flatter materialists to maintain himself. Of course, Abai wasn't living in the mountain or jungle, but in the city of New Delhi. And yet he had virtually adopted the renounced mode Sukadev had suggested, not to punish his body or prove himself pure or uncompromising, but because he had to live in poverty if he wanted to regularly publish and produce Back to Godhead. For Abai it was a great labor of love, and purchasing paper for printing became a priority even before eating. Neglecting his personal needs for preaching was a manifestation of his faith in Krishna, of which Abai suffered no scarcity. He had full faith that if he served Krishna, he would be provided for. To work alone was not an unsurmountable problem. It was pleasant and simple. It was better than having to manage the neophyte inmates of the Gaudiya Sangha. The ecstasy of working hard to serve his spiritual master was not a problem. The problem was the condition of the world. So Prabhupada could have stayed at his Godbrother's place, ignored these letters we read earlier from Ramananda. But Prabhupada decided to leave and be on his own and just struggle and just be happy in that struggle to not to possess anything, not to hanker after anything, and just have the satisfaction that his efforts were pleasing Bhaktisiddhanta somehow. And if something came out of it, fine. If nothing, at least his effort. And one time he told us that. He said, I'm giving you Krishna consciousness, you take it. If you don't, my business is done. You know, I've done my business of giving you, presenting Krishna consciousness. Now it's up to you to take it. That taking is all each individual according to. Just like if I'm not hungry, you can put the best plate of food in front of me, I won't have any appetite to eat. But if you have an appetite, you'll eat anything. So it depends on us, our appetite for Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada could present it in a very appealing way, but it depends on us if we take to it or not. But Srila Prabhupada saw the need after 4 years of reprinting, starting his Back to God, even though he had no arrangement, nothing to facilitate that. Still, he was pushing on, probably realizing that I can't depend on the circumstances. Just like his first meeting with Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, his argument was that India has to be a liberated country, has to be free from the British. Then people will take us seriously. And Bhaktisiddhanta's argument is that Krishna consciousness was so important that it couldn't wait for that to take place. And it wasn't dependent on that. Ahaitaki pratiyata, there's no material impediment. So to think that we have to get rid of the British first and then Krishna consciousness will work, that wasn't Bhaktisiddhanta's vision. So here Prabhupada is in a similar way understanding that if I wait for the perfect circumstances to have a place where steadily I can preach, I have a permanent address and depend on people's donations, nothing will ever come of it. So I might as well do it now and depend on Krishna. And if I can, print one magazine, fine. If I don't, but at least let me print one, and maybe we'll see next month. And Prabhupada was constantly writing. He was constantly writing despite the fact that he didn't have the means of publishing. He had stacks of articles and things ready to be published if the means came. So he was showing his eagerness. And he had faith that somehow Krishna would, because this was Krishna's desire, it was his spiritual master's desire. One time they asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, some journalists, they were hearing that Bhaktisiddhanta had many plans. He would open temples and print the Brihad Madanga. He had started Sajjana Toshani, the harmonists. So typical journalists say, oh, Maharaj, where you get the money? Where are you going to get the money to all this? He said, I will take one brick from Vaikuntha, and that should be sufficient. Only a person like Bhaktisiddhanta can give that kind of answer. I will take one brick from Vaikuntha, and that will be sufficient. You know, when you hear this, it's incredible, that kind of answer. Huh? You meditate on that. Who would answer like this? Huh? So we're very fortunate that we have such exalted personalities like Bhaktisiddhanta, and we're part of that sampradaya, that great movement of the Goswamis, of Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada, who had such a transcendental vision and who created a society of ISKCON for us to take advantage of. Now it's up to us to see if we're prepared. We're fortunate. We may not have to go through this kind of austerity, but Prabhupada did all these austerities, worked so hard, so that in the future we could come and take advantage. So take advantage doesn't mean just filling our bellies. It means taking advantage of becoming Krishna conscious. That we should be an object of pride for Prabhupada. That Prabhupada should see us and see, wow, okay, the effort was... And Prabhupada said, if I only make one moon, there can be so many stars, but I'm looking for one moon. So even that, Prabhupada wasn't just making one. The whole effort was worthwhile. He wasn't thinking, okay, if I get 1,000, if I get, if not, I'll go back to India, what's the point? I won't even go to America, what's the point? But he was thinking, if I can get one serious person to take to Krishna consciousness. So, at least that's our task individually, that we become that sincere person. And the day that we do meet Srila Prabhupada, he'll be happy with us and say, okay, at least this one didn't waste his time. He made some advancement. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.